afternoon and welcome back to Football League World TV. We've got another debate show for you this afternoon where we're going to be discussing what the future holds for Fulham. Playmaker Fabio Carvalho, one of the most sought after young players in the NFL at the moment. So it's going to be good to get into some discussion around him and what the future holds. I'm your host, Alfie Burns, and joining me are my two colleagues, Marcus and Billy. Marcus, how are you this afternoon?
Yeah, really well. Thanks, Alfie. I think watching these young, exciting players break through to the first team for the very first time is definitely one of the more exciting things about following the EFL so closely. So, glad to be on to talk about Carvalho today.
And how are you getting on, Billy?
Yeah, excited, as Marcus says, to talk about somebody that's been lighting up the Championship all season, a top quality player that will go on to top quality things, I'm sure.
Absolutely. We're streaming across Facebook, YouTube and Twitter as always this afternoon. So if you are joining us and want to get in touch with your thoughts on Carvalho and where you think is going to be best for him to move at the end of the season, whether that's staying with Fulham or moving on to a Premier League club, a different Premier League club, maybe even that, do get yourselves in the comments. It's always great to hear from you. I think that the best place to start would probably be the January transfer window when it looked, for all money that Carvalho was on his way to Liverpool, a deal agreed, believed to be in the region of £8 million for him to head to Anfield and then back to Fulham on loan for the remainder of the 2021-22 season. That didn't happen. It didn't meet the deadline at the end of the January transfer window. But still, Marcus, do you think that leaves Liverpool in the driving seat to sign Carvalho when his contract at Fulham expires at the end of this season?
Yeah, it would certainly seem so. It did come across like it was merely running out of time rather than any sort of late disagreements or anything between the two clubs. From a financial point of view, Fulham maybe they can't have predicted to be this comfortable in the Championship at this stage, but if they could maybe have it back, they wouldn't mind taking in a fee to the level of £8 million, where that they're unlikely to recoup maybe that amount in the summer. We'll have to wait and see. But I definitely would say that Liverpool are in the driving seat. Obviously, they're a bit of a financial powerhouse compared to all the clubs, the likes of Liverpool, Manchester City, Paris Saint-Germain. There's no one really that can compete with those three. So, I think Liverpool have got to be considered to be in the driving seat, having already sort of met with the player and had negotiations that were so far down the line compared to any other alternative destinations.
And what about you, Billy? Do you feel that Liverpool are in the driving seat after that deal collapsed in January?
Yeah, I definitely think if the destination is going to be English, then it will be Liverpool. We've seen him, his performances have attracted the interest of in wider Europe as well. So it would not be a surprise to see him elsewhere. But yeah, I think sticking in England, then it has to be Liverpool. Liverpool seem to have done the groundwork already, and it's just a fact of waiting to see what happens. And in terms of if he does go to Liverpool, then what the immediate future will be. Obviously, such a brilliant player. I think we've seen that all season. It's no surprise to see this interest surface. It's just whether Liverpool will decide that that the attacking trio needs freshening up. And I think that looking at their options, Carvalho has to be up there as one of the brightest prospects and one that they'll be sure to keep an eye out on. And as summer comes, I'm sure they'll make their move again.
Let's just discuss, say it does play out and Carvalho does move to Liverpool in the summer. He's going to have some fierce competition for a place in Jurgen Klopp's starting lineup. Salah, Mane, Firmino, Diaz and Diogo Jota as well. Carvalho is only 19 years old, so he's got time on his side to establish himself at Anfield. But do you feel that Liverpool would be the right move for his short-term development, Marcus?
I can see it working in his favour, yes. Obviously, the concern is that he's not going to get as much game time as he is at Fulham at the moment. I think Liverpool could still be able to afford him that, but in a loan move next season, I do think he'll be able to have regular first-team football next season if he signs for Liverpool, but I'd expect it to be out on loan. Although the one concern would be how long that would go on for. You don't want him maybe signing a contract for sort of 5-6 years and then the first 3 or 4 of them are sent on loan and he's on a bit of a rush and got his contract running down, ends up sort of rotting away on the reserves or still playing under 23 football when he's grown out of that. So in terms of short term, he's such a young player. Short term could almost be classed as the next 3 years at 19. But look at categorising it just for next season, I can see him going on loan and getting regular football. Also at Liverpool, some of their players are ageing, so I can see possibly some vacancies coming up. The likes of Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott are being sort of nurtured quite well to be future first team players. Salah and Mane are 29 now. Roberto Firmino's 30, so you could argue their best years are behind them. So there could be a point in the near future where Carvalho is able to just step into the fray and cement a place in the starting 11. But I can't see that being next season at Anfield. I think the most likely chance that moving to Liverpool is successful for his short-term development would be if the Reds are able to find an ideal destination for him to be playing week in, week out next season, potentially, of course, in the Premier League.
And what are your thoughts, Billy, if Carvalho does make the move to Liverpool? Where can you see him fitting into that Liverpool 4-3-3 system and with some of the players that he'd be going up against for a starting berth?
I think it's not adding too much to what Marcus has already said. I think the notion of the sort of the aging front three, I think they're in a position. I think they've been looking over the last year to freshen things up and, take a sustainable approach to it and ensure that they've got a front three ready to replace the current front three. And I think that they've done well so far. And I think that's where Carvalho will slot in. And subsequently, Salah and Mane, Firmino, they've still got a few years left at this level. So I can't see him going up and seeing regular football with Liverpool. I think it has to be down the loan route. And it's then finding a suitor that's not just going to afford him game time, but operate in a similar way to Liverpool to try and best approach his future and best prepare him for the rigours of playing for Liverpool Football Club. It's definitely an interesting situation because there are quite a few Premier League clubs that have been involved and they'll be eager to strike a loan deal. And when Fulham get promoted to the Premier League, I'm sure there'll be another suitor. So it's definitely a lot of options in terms of what comes next for Carvalho, and that stretches to if he does become a Liverpool player, because there'll be a lot of options there too. Will he play as a sort of a deputy role and come off from the bench? It's I don't think that will probably be the best idea or best thing for his immediate future, but he's still 19, as Marcus says, and there's a lot of football left to be played in his career. And we hope as EFL fans that have seen him throughout this season how excited we have become from his performances. We don't want to see him rot away and play sort of a deputy role. We want to see him every week and proving his class, because it's evident that he is such a quality footballer.
Of course, it's not just Liverpool that have been credited with an interest in Carvalho. Over the last 12 months, some of the other sides linked have been the likes of Leeds, Southampton and West Ham. They're three clubs of a number of clubs, really, but the three clubs at different levels in the Premier League at the moment. Marcus, out of those three, do you see any of them being a better move than Liverpool for somebody like Carvalho at this stage of his career?
Possibly as a loan destination, I can see it more realistically, to be honest. For those three clubs, unless maybe geographically he wants to stay in London, maybe he'd want to go to West Ham if they can offer him European football next season. But I struggle to see what that trio would be able to offer him that Liverpool can't. They won't be able to compete on the sort of financial packages that they're able to offer him, and potentially, Liverpool being able to offer him Champions League football the way that they seem to be qualifying with ease. There'd be opportunities for Carvalho, you would think, in some kind of group stage if he did stay at Liverpool rather than go on loan, having signed there in the summer. So, I'm not sure I can see him going to Leeds or Southampton. The one that would be a possibility would be West Ham. Just because of how high they are in the table. Also quite a thin squad, so there'd be a realistic chance that he would play quite a lot. But I struggle to see him choosing one of those three over Liverpool on a permanent basis. And of course, Liverpool would be able to to say to him that is what he desires, then they could probably just loan him to one of those 3 clubs in 2022-23. So yeah, in terms of a permanent destination, I find it tough to see any of those 3 clubs beating Liverpool to his signature.
And I think you sort of touched on it, Billy, in your last answer. A loan somewhere else for Carvalho could be good for his future prospects at Liverpool. Could one of a club like Leeds, Southampton, West Ham be a decent stepping stone for him to eventually go on and make it at Liverpool with so much time on his side?
Yeah, I definitely think that would be the best way to go about it. As I think me and Marcus both alluded to, I don't think the best option would be to, sit on the bench at Liverpool straight away. I think he needs to be playing football. He needs to continue his progression. And I don't know if under 23s football will do that for him or playing sort of a bit part at Liverpool. So, yeah, I do think a Premier League loan or even a loan elsewhere in Europe could be viewed as the best option for him, looking at the clubs that you've mentioned. I would have my reservations about West Ham. I think they've got other priorities that they need to address within the squad before looking at sort of a creative option. I think they've got creative options in abundance at the moment. So again, would he get the sufficient game time to justify a move to West Ham? I'm not too sure. Leeds and Southampton, I think they would promise more game time. But as Marcus says, then it comes down to personal desirables such as Champions League football and perhaps the wage packet. So yeah, I think ultimately Liverpool would be the ideal destination, and perhaps a loan move back to Fulham when they become a Premier League club again could be viewed as the best option, operating under Marco Silva again, a manager that has a lot of faith and a lot of trust in him. It wouldn't change his setting too much. So yeah, I think pressed for what I would think would happen, I think it would be going to Liverpool and then a Premier League move from there.
Carvalho has had a vital role at Fulham under Marco Silva this season. It's 7 goals and 6 assists in the Championship. Fulham far and away at the top of the Championship table and seemingly destined for a place back in the Premier League. Carvalho's contract is the main sticking point, though. He's out of contract with the West London club in the summer. So that's why he was on the verge of joining Liverpool in the January transfer window. And not much has changed in the way of his contract. Reports over the last few days have revealed that both Fulham and Liverpool are keen to avoid a tribunal when it comes to, arranging a fee for Carvalho to make the move to Anfield. With Fulham with one foot in the Premier League, Marcus, do you think the future of somebody like Carvalho is probably quite high on their agenda at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be very difficult for them to convince him to stay. I think that's been something that they tried to do as soon as he sort of broke into the first team in the opening weeks of the season. They knew that the interest would start sparking around him, and with that contract situation looming in the background, even in the months leading up to the January transfer window, there were murmurs that maybe he was going to sign a new deal. Now they can definitely, well, not confirmed, but they can pretty much go to Carvalho and say, look, we can offer you Premier League football next season. Will you sign on? So I can't see that negotiation developing. It does seem like his head's been turned with how close things got in January. Whether it's the player or the agent that means he hasn't ended up signing a contract, I'm not sure. But it does seem like that position isn't going to change. So yeah, I mean, it would be very tough at this point for Fulham to be able to sway his view, but it is something that maybe they can have one last crack at, because yeah, as you say, that they shouldn't be having too many sort of nerves about securing the league title even in the Championship. So yeah, hopefully he gets swept away in the joy of achieving promotion, and maybe they are able to convince him. But yeah, with the likes of Liverpool involved, it's going to be very difficult.
Common sense would tell you then that Fulham and Liverpool are in contact over Carvalho at this moment in time. And as you've both sort of touched on earlier in the show, the possibility of Carvalho joining Liverpool and then going back to Fulham next season is something that we might see happen. That was obviously going to be the case in January. Do you think that that's going to be, a topic that both clubs are discussing at the minute, Billy?
Yeah, I think it has to be. I think it's pretty well documented now that Fulham and Liverpool have some sort of connection. You think Nico Williams coming, you think there's interest in Joe Gomez from Fulham's side. So yeah, I think that there'll be fairly regular conversations about the future of Carvalho and how they intend to deploy him and what kind of role he'll step into when he does arrive at Liverpool, should that be the outcome. As I say, it'd be a great move going back to Fulham. Obviously been a massive part of this project in pretty much already getting them out of the Championship and back to the Premier League. And he's someone that can progress with the team, someone that, given another stint with Fulham, I'm sure he'll so that those connections with Mitrovic, those connections with Harry Wilson will continue to be there in the Premier League. It's quite an exciting prospect, Fulham being back in the Premier League. And if you add Carvalho to that equation, then it just adds even more excitement. And another reason why Fulham fans will be confident going into the new campaign and trying to avoid the Premier League drop. But ultimately, nothing's said and done yet. There's still a lot of interest in him, and should he go to Liverpool, there's still a lot of options for him in England and perhaps stretching that out to Europe as well.
Let's wrap things up then. Looking ahead to 2022-23, Marcus, what do you think is going to be best for Carvalho?
Well, even though it's really unlikely, I think the best for his development and for him to reach his peak in his career, I think he should sign a new deal at Fulham, to be honest. I think he could stay in a system where he's thriving under a manager who trusts him and appreciates his skill set, which is not guaranteed wherever he goes in the summer. There could be some kind of deal where there's a release clause that's already been agreed with Liverpool to ensure that Carvalho knows that Fulham are still committed to letting him move on, because it's unlikely they're going to be able to offer him in terms of football or finances anything like what Liverpool would get. And just trying to kick on with Fulham and prove himself in the top flight next season. Even though that could happen on loan, sometimes it's just not quite the same feel. Maybe Silva wouldn't be prioritising him as much because he was a loan player, looking ahead to next season as well. So yeah, I think he should possibly stay where he's thriving and sign a new deal. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen, but I feel like that would be possibly the most sensible move at this stage. I can see it working at Liverpool, but I wouldn't want him to be going on loan. Say you did go on a season-long loan next season, which feels like the most likely outcome of this. I wouldn't want it to go on for more than maybe one season, to be honest. Otherwise, he risks sort of ending up a bit like Takumi Minamino on the reserves list, playing mainly cup football and entering his sort of early 20s, stuck on a long contract, not really being able to find anywhere else to take him. So I think he should stay and prove himself in the top flight with Fulham on a permanent basis. I don't think it will happen. I think he will end up going to Liverpool and possibly being loaned out in the Premier League next season. But I think it's more risky for him to leave Fulham, where he's performing so well, where he knows he's got a manager that trusts him and is getting the best out of him. None of that is guaranteed anywhere else. So I think having a crack at the top flight with Fulham, maybe for one season, and then leaving for a higher fee than what he'll go for in the summer of 2023 would be best for his development.
And how about you, Billy? Where are you sat with it at the moment?
I do agree with Marcus and everything he's saying, but I do feel like going to Liverpool seems inevitable at this stage. It seems that it's the thing that's going to happen. Signing a new contract at Fulham, to me, just doesn't really seem on the same level as going to Liverpool. It feels that that's going to be the most likely outcome, and I think from there, then it is loaning him back to Fulham. I think that would be sort of the ideal scenario. Of course, there'll be no guarantees that if he does depart for Liverpool that he will return on loan to Craven Cottage. But as Marcus says there, you don't want it going on past a season. He'll be likely to sign a long contract at Liverpool, given the evident talent he has and the potential that comes with it as well. So if it starts going into 2 or 3 seasons out on loan, then we're starting to question the move, really. And I feel at the same time, he's still a young player, plying his trade, and he's still, he probably doesn't know what the best move will be for his future. So it's definitely a lot of factors playing in this. But I feel if he did go to Fulham again, and the kind of squad that Marco Silva's created. I feel that he will settle back in, and Marcus does raise the good point that, you know, he might not be prioritised as much, but I feel that, you know, he is in the squad on merit. It's not just playing him, you know, and trying to find this young gem and trying to polish him off. He's playing week in, week out because he is one of the best young players in the division, and I feel that won't change should they go into the Premier League. He'll still be a top quality player, and he'll still be a player that I feel will progress a lot under Marco Silva, even if on loan.
That concludes this afternoon's debate show. Then a really interesting topic, and it's going to be worth keeping tabs on the Carvalho to Liverpool move ahead of the season's end. Thanks to Marcus and Billy for joining me this afternoon. Plenty coming up on Football League World TV tomorrow. Ned Holmes is finishing his fan awards with the League 2 nominations, and then there's a couple of debate shows as we look at Johnny Jackson at Charlton and Joe Worrell at Nottingham Forest. So please do make sure you tune into both those shows, and we'll see you again soon.